Welcome to HFY Stories. If you're ready for jaw-dropping stories and a universe full of excitement, hit that subscribe button like it's the big red button in a space opera. Give us a like if you're feeling that interstellar vibe and comment below to join the conversation. We want to hear from you. Yes, you, the spacefarer with a great story idea, or just a fan of epic human victories. The Fall of Hope. The galaxy had never seen such devastation. The Solarian Empire, once thought invincible, was reduced to ashes in mere months. Their mighty fleets, numbering in the thousands, were nothing more than wreckage scattered across space. The invaders, an unknown species from the dark fringes of the universe, had struck with a ferocity and precision that defied comprehension. For centuries, the Solarians had been the protectors of the Galactic Coalition, a union of countless star systems bound by treaties of peace and mutual defense. But now, those treaties were meaningless, and the coalition was in shambles. One by one, the member worlds fell, their desperate cries for help going unanswered, as the invaders pushed forward, unrelenting. On the lush world of Ilara Prime, the coalition's last bastion, hope was a fragile thing. The capital city, Vando, was a fortress of towering spires and impenetrable shields. But even here, the shadow of defeat loomed large. The invaders had encircled the planet, cutting off all escape routes. It was only a matter of time before they broke through the defenses. Inside the council chambers, a sense of dread hung in the air. The councillors, representing the few remaining coalition members, were gathered for what felt like a final meeting. Their leader, High Councillor Varun, an aged Solarian with silver scales, dulled by stress, stood at the head of the table. "We cannot hold out much longer," Varun said, his voice heavy with despair. "Our fleets are decimated, our armies scattered. The enemy is closing in on all sides. We have no allies left to turn to." Councillor Zara, a fiery young representative from the planet Valora, slammed her fist on the table. "We cannot simply give up. There must be something we can do." Varun shook his head. "We've exhausted every option, Zara. Even our most advanced weapons have proven useless against the invaders. We are outmatched in every way." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The reality was inescapable. The coalition was on the brink of extinction. But then, a voice broke through the gloom. Councillor Thorne, a grizzled veteran from the now-destroyed planet Aris, spoke up. "There is one option we haven't considered," he said, his tone grim but resolute. "We could summon the human fleet." The room fell silent. The humans, those enigmatic beings from the distant world of Earth, were a subject of both awe and fear among the coalition. They were a relatively new addition to the galaxy's political landscape, having only recently made contact with the coalition. But their reputation had spread far and wide. The humans were known for their unparalleled resilience, their ability to adapt to any situation, and their unyielding determination in the face of adversity. But they were also known for their unpredictability and their willingness to go to extremes to achieve their goals. "The human fleet?" Varun asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "We don't even know if they're still out there. The last time we communicated with them was years ago, and they were fighting a war of their own." "That war is over," Thorne replied. "The humans won, and if the rumors are true, their fleet is more powerful than ever. If anyone can stand against the invaders, it's them." "But at what cost?" Councillor Zara interjected. "The humans are not like us. They are ruthless. If we summon them, we may be trading one enemy for another." Thorne met her gaze, unflinching. "At this point, does it matter? We're already dead if we do nothing. I'd rather take a chance with the humans than sit here and wait for the end." Varun sighed, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "We are out of options. If the human fleet can give us even a glimmer of hope, then we must try." The councillors exchanged uneasy glances, but ultimately nodded in agreement. It was a desperate move, but desperation was all they had left. Vurin activated a holographic console embedded in the table. The device hummed to life, projecting a three-dimensional star map into the air. With a few swift gestures, Viren pinpointed the coordinates of Earth's last known location and initiated the long-range communication signal. The counselors watched in tense silence as the signal was transmitted across the vast expanse of space. Seconds turned into minutes, and minutes felt like hours. There was no guarantee the message would even reach its destination. But then, the holographic map flickered, and a new image appeared. It was the face of a human, a woman with sharp features, piercing blue eyes, and a steely expression. She wore a dark uniform adorned with the insignia of the human fleet. "This is Admiral Evelyn Drake of the human fleet," she said, her voice calm and authoritative. "We received your distress signal. What is your situation?" Viren stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "Admiral Drake, we are the remnants of the Galactic Coalition. Our worlds are under attack by a powerful and unknown enemy. We have nowhere else to turn. We request your assistance." Drake's expression remained unreadable as she processed the information. "Tell me everything you know about the enemy," she said. Over the next several minutes, Viren and the other counselors relayed what little they knew about the invaders, their tactics, their technology, their overwhelming numbers. Drake listened intently, her face betraying no emotion. When they were finished, Drake was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice resolute. "We will assist you. The human fleet will engage the enemy and do whatever is necessary to protect your worlds." A wave of relief washed over the counselors, but it was tempered by the gravity of the situation. They had summoned the human fleet, but they knew there would be a price to pay. As the communication ended, Viren turned to the others. "We have made our choice. Now we must prepare for what comes next." Outside the council chambers, the sky above Ilara Prime darkened as the enemy ships drew closer. But now, there was a glimmer of hope, a hope that had been reignited by the promise of the human fleet. The arrival of the fleet. The days following the communication with Admiral Drake were a whirlwind of activity. On Ilara Prime, the coalition forces scrambled to fortify their remaining defenses, knowing that they had to hold out until the human fleet arrived. But time was running out. The invaders intensified their assault, bombarding the planet's shields with relentless precision. The once impenetrable barriers now flickered and wavered under the strain, and cracks began to form in the coalition's resolve. In the midst of this chaos, Councillor Zara found herself wandering through the capital's bustling streets, trying to clear her mind. The weight of the decision to summon the humans weighed heavily on her heart. She had argued against it, fearing the consequences of unleashing such a force upon the galaxy. But now that the choice had been made, there was no turning back. As she walked, Zara noticed the fear and uncertainty in the eyes of the citizens. Families huddled together in shelters, their faces etched with worry. Soldiers marched through the streets, their expressions grim as they prepared for the inevitable battle. It was a scene of desperation, and Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were all standing on the precipice of oblivion. But then something unexpected happened. The sky above Vanda suddenly darkened, and a low, rumbling sound echoed through the city. Zara looked up, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she feared that the invaders had finally breached the planet's defenses. But what she saw was something entirely different. A massive fleet of starships emerged from the void, descending upon Ilara Prime with a precision and grace that left the coalition forces in awe. The ships were sleek and formidable, their hulls gleaming in the dim light of the planet's atmosphere. At the head of the fleet was a colossal battleship, its presence commanding and unmistakable. The human fleet had arrived. As the ships settled into formation above the city, a series of smaller vessels broke off and descended toward the surface. Zara watched in amazement as the landing craft touched down in the heart of Vanda, their ramps lowering to reveal rows of armored soldiers. The humans disembarked with military efficiency, their weapons at the ready and their expressions focused. Zara's breath caught in her throat as she watched the scene unfold. She had never seen humans in person before, only in the scattered reports and images that had made their way to the coalition. But now, seeing them up close, she couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and apprehension. Among the soldiers was Admiral Drake, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was flanked by a contingent of high-ranking officers, their faces set in determined expressions. As they made their way through the streets, the coalition forces parted to let them pass, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Zara felt a surge of determination as she watched Admiral Drake approach the council chambers. She knew she needed to be there, to witness whatever was about to unfold. With quick strides, she followed the Admiral, her mind racing with questions and uncertainties. Inside the chambers, the councillors were already gathered, their faces etched with worry and anticipation. Viren stood at the head of the table, his expression tense as he prepared to address the human leader. "Admiral Drake," Viren began, his voice carefully measured, "we are grateful for your swift response. The situation is dire, and we are in your debt for coming to our aid." Drake nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We are here to help, but let's make one thing clear. This isn't charity. We're here because we believe that a united galaxy is worth fighting for. But we also expect cooperation and full disclosure from the coalition." Viren exchanged a quick glance with the other councillors before nodding. "Of course, we will provide you with all the information we have. But I must ask, what is your plan?" Drake's expression hardened. "Our first priority is to secure the planet. My fleet will engage the enemy in orbit, but we will also deploy ground forces to assist your defenses. Once Ilara Prime is secure, we will assess the situation and determine the next steps." Zara listened intently, her heart racing with a mix of hope and fear. The humans were confident, perhaps too confident, but their presence was a beacon of light in the darkness that had engulfed the galaxy. As the briefing continued, Zara couldn't help but notice the tension between Viren and Drake. There was a palpable sense of mistrust, a feeling that they were allies of convenience rather than true partners. But there was no time to dwell on such matters. The enemy was at their doorstep, and the battle for Ilara Prime was about to begin. Outside the chambers, the city buzzed with activity as the coalition forces and human soldiers prepared for the impending assault. The sky above was now filled with the ominous silhouettes of the invaders' ships, their weapons trained on the planet below. Zara watched from a balcony as the first shots were fired. The human fleet moved with a precision and coordination that was awe-inspiring, their ships cutting through the enemy lines with deadly efficiency. But the invaders were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless as they swarmed the defenders. The ground shook as explosions rocked the city, and the once pristine streets were filled with smoke and debris. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the battle unfold, her thoughts consumed by the uncertainty of what was to come. But amidst the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope, a hope that the humans, with their unyielding determination and unmatched firepower, could turn the tide of the war. And as Zara looked to the sky, she prayed that they were not too late. The cost of victory. The battle for Ilara Prime raged on, each hour feeling like an eternity. The coalition forces, bolstered by the arrival of the human fleet, fought with renewed vigor, their spirits lifted by the presence of their powerful allies. But the invaders were not easily deterred, and the fighting grew fiercer with each passing moment. Zara had never seen anything like it. The human soldiers moved with a precision and discipline that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. They fought with a ferocity that seemed almost inhuman, their determination unyielding even in the face of overwhelming odds. But it was clear that this victory would not come without a cost. The city of Vanda, once a shining beacon of hope for the coalition, was now a battlefield. The once pristine streets were littered with debris and the remnants of shattered buildings. Smoke filled the air, and the sounds of explosions and gunfire echoed through the city. The citizens of Ilara Prime had been evacuated to underground shelters, but even there, the fear was palpable. Zara found herself in the heart of the battle, working alongside the human and coalition soldiers. She had never been a warrior, but in these desperate times, everyone was needed. Her task was to assist with the coordination of the defense efforts, relaying information between the various units, and ensuring that supplies and reinforcements were directed where they were most needed. As she worked, Zara couldn't help but notice the tension that simmered beneath the surface. The coalition forces were grateful for the human assistance, but there was also a lingering sense of unease. The humans were unlike any allies they had ever encountered. They were efficient, ruthless, and utterly focused on the task at hand. There was no room for hesitation or doubt, and that made some of the coalition soldiers uneasy. But there was no time to dwell on these concerns. The invaders were pressing their attack, and the defenders were struggling to hold the line. The human fleet above the planet was engaged in a brutal space battle, their ships weaving through the enemy formations with deadly precision. On the ground, the human soldiers fought alongside the coalition forces, their advanced weapons cutting through the enemy ranks. Zara had seen death before, but never on this scale. The casualties were mounting, and it was clear that this battle would be remembered as one of the bloodiest in the history of the galaxy. But despite the horrors unfolding around her, Zara found herself drawn to the human leader, Admiral Drake. Drake was a force of nature, commanding her troops with an authority that left no room for doubt. She was everywhere at once, issuing orders, assessing the battlefield, and coordinating the defense with a level of skill that was unmatched. But there was something else about her, something that Zara couldn't quite put her finger on. There was a coldness in Drake's eyes, a hardness that spoke of someone who had seen too much, who had been through too many battles and lost too many comrades. But there was also a deep sense of duty, a commitment to the cause that was unshakable. It was this combination that both fascinated and unsettled Zara. As the battle wore on, Zara found herself working more closely with Drake. The Admiral had taken note of Zara's skills and had enlisted her help in coordinating the ground forces. It was a daunting task, but Zara rose to the challenge, a respect for the human leader growing with each passing moment. But there was no time for admiration. The enemy was relentless, and the defenders were being pushed to their limits. The shields protecting the capital were failing, and it was only a matter of time before the invaders broke through. In a desperate bid to turn the tide, Drake devised a daring plan. She ordered a strike team to infiltrate the enemy command ship, hoping to cripple their leadership and sow chaos among their ranks. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. Zara volunteered to join the strike team, despite the protests of the other counselors. She knew the risks, but she also knew that this might be their only chance to save Ilara Prime. Drake reluctantly agreed, recognizing the value of having a coalition representative on the mission. The strike team consisted of a mix of human and coalition soldiers, each handpicked for their skills and experience. They boarded a stealth shuttle and launched into space, their target the massive enemy command ship that loomed ominously above the planet. The journey was tense, the silence in the shuttle broken only by the hum of the engines. Zara's heart raced as they approached their target, the reality of what they were about to do sinking in. This was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. But there was no turning back now. The shuttle docked with the enemy ship, and the team disembarked, moving swiftly and silently through the dimly lit corridors. The enemy soldiers were caught off guard, their defenses unprepared for such a bold move. The strike team made their way to the command center, taking out any resistance they encountered with lethal efficiency. Zara had never been in combat before, but the human soldiers moved with such precision that she found herself following their lead, her fear replaced by a grim determination. They reached the command center, a massive chamber filled with alien technology and manned by the enemy's highest-ranking officers. The team moved in, weapons at the ready, and a fierce battle erupted. It was chaos. The enemy fought back with everything they had, but the strike team was relentless. Zara found herself in the thick of it, her adrenaline surging as she fought alongside the humans. There was no time to think, only to act. But then, disaster struck. One of the human soldiers was hit, and the team was forced to retreat into cover. Zara could see the desperation in Drake's eyes as she assessed the situation. They were so close, but it was clear that they couldn't hold out much longer. Then, in a moment of clarity, Drake made a decision. She ordered the team to fall back, leaving her and a small group to complete the mission. Zara protested, but Drake silenced her with a look. "Get out of here," Drake ordered, her voice firm. "That's an order." Zara hesitated, torn between her duty and her growing admiration for the human leader. But she knew there was no time to argue. With a heavy heart, she nodded and led the remaining team members back to the shuttle. As they retreated, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was the last time she would see Drake. The shuttle launched, and Zara watched in silence as the enemy ship receded into the distance. The mission had been a success, but the cost had been high. And as they returned to the war-torn surface of Ilara Prime, Zara couldn't help but wonder if the price they had paid was worth it. The abyss of sacrifice. The aftermath of the strike left a heavy silence over the defenders. Admiral Drake's decision to stay behind, ensuring the mission's success, had not gone unnoticed. Her sacrifice was a stark reminder of the cost of war and the weight of command. Yet, even as the coalition celebrated the crippling of the enemy's command, the mood was somber. Ilara Prime, once a symbol of the coalition's strength and unity, now lay in ruins. The human fleet continued its relentless defense of the planet, but the toll was evident. Ships that had once gleamed with the promise of salvation now bore the scars of battle, their hulls pockmarked with damage, their crews weary and stretched thin. Zara found herself at the heart of the coalition's war council, now operating out of a heavily fortified bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. With the loss of Admiral Drake, the human forces had looked to her for leadership, a role she had reluctantly taken on. But Zara was no admiral, no strategist. She was a diplomat, a bridge between worlds, and yet now she found herself tasked with the survival of her people. The room was filled with tension as coalition leaders and human officers argued over their next move. The strike on the enemy command ship had given them a brief respite, but the invaders were regrouping, and it was only a matter of time before they launched another assault. Zara could see the strain in their faces, the desperation in their voices. They were running out of options, and everyone knew it. "We cannot hold Ilara Prime," one of the human commanders said, his voice harsh. "Our forces are stretched too thin. We need to consider a tactical withdrawal." "Withdraw?" Viren's voice was sharp, filled with disbelief. "This is our home. We cannot abandon it." Zara's heart ached at the thought of leaving Ilara Prime to the invaders, but she knew the commander was right. The city was in ruins, the people scattered and broken. There was nothing left to fight for here, only the cold logic of survival. "We cannot win this battle," Zara said, her voice quiet but firm. "But that doesn't mean we have lost the war. If we can regroup, we can fight back, reclaim what we've lost." Viren looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "And where do we go, Zara? Where do we regroup?" Zara hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She looked to the human officers, searching for any sign of hope, but they were silent, their faces grim. The truth was, they had no plan, no clear path forward. They were all just trying to survive. But then, as if in answer to her unspoken plea, a message came through. A transmission from deep space, a signal that had been all but forgotten in the chaos of the battle. Incoming transmission from Admiral Drake. Zara's heart skipped a beat as the words registered. It was impossible. Drake had stayed behind on the enemy command ship, a ship that had been destroyed in the aftermath of the strike. And yet, it was her voice, clear and unmistakable. The room fell silent as the transmission played. Drake's voice was calm, steady, as if she was speaking to them from beyond the grave. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it back. But I need you to know that this isn't the end. The enemy isn't as strong as they seem. They're desperate, on the verge of collapse. We've hurt them, more than they'll ever admit. But they'll keep coming, keep pushing, because they know if they stop, it's over for them. Drake's words hung in the air, a beacon of hope in the darkness that surrounded them. We've set a trap for them, Drake continued, a final stand. The human fleet will hold them off, buy you time to escape. But you need to go now. Take the survivors, get them to safety. There's a planet on the edge of the galaxy, uninhabited, off the charts. The coordinates are in the data packet attached to this message. Go there, regroup, and when you're ready, come back and finish what we started. The transmission ended, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. For a moment, no one spoke, the weight of Drake's words settling over them like a shroud. But then Zara stood, her voice steady, filled with a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. We will not let her sacrifice be in vain, she said, her eyes meeting each of the commanders in turn. We will go to this planet, we will regroup, and we will return. The enemy thinks they've won, but they haven't seen the last of us. We will rise, stronger than before, and we will take back what is ours. The decision was made. The evacuation of Ilara Prime began immediately, the human and coalition forces working together to ensure the safety of the survivors. The enemy had not yet realized the significance of the strike on their command ship, and the defenders used this time to their advantage, slipping away under the cover of darkness. Zara oversaw the evacuation, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this was the end of an era. But as she watched the last shuttle lift off, she felt a glimmer of hope. The human fleet remained behind, their ships forming a protective barrier around the planet, ready to give their lives to buy the coalition the time they needed. As the last shuttle broke through the atmosphere, Zara looked back at the planet that had been her home. The skies were filled with fire, the enemy descending upon the human fleet with a fury born of desperation. But the humans held their ground, their ships shining like beacons in the darkness. Zara turned away, focusing on the path ahead. They had a new home to find, a new beginning to forge. And when the time came, they would return. And they would not be alone. The journey to the uncharted planet was long and arduous, but the coalition and human survivors made it safely. The planet was as Drake had promised, uninhabited, with the resources they needed to rebuild. It was a small hope, a fragile spark in the vastness of space, but it was enough. As they began to rebuild, Zara couldn't help but think of Drake, of the sacrifice she had made so they could have this chance. The Admiral's words echoed in her mind, a reminder that this was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter in their fight. And as the days turned to weeks, and the weeks to months, Zara's resolve only grew stronger. They would rise from the ashes of Ilara Prime, and when they did, the galaxy would tremble at the might of the coalition and their human allies. But for now they waited, biding their time, gathering their strength, and when the time came, they would be ready. The reckoning. The coalition and human forces spent months on the uncharted planet, rebuilding their strength, honing their skills, and preparing for the inevitable return to Ilara Prime. It was a time of healing and reflection, but also of resolve. The loss of their home had forged them into something stronger, something more determined. Zara had taken on a new role during this time, not just as a diplomat, but as a leader. She worked closely with the human commanders, learning their ways, their strategies, and their unyielding determination. The bond between the coalition and the humans grew stronger with each passing day, born out of mutual respect and a shared purpose. The planet, now named New Ilara, became a symbol of hope for the survivors. It was a harsh world, with rugged terrain and a climate that tested their limits. But it was also a place of renewal. The coalition forces adapted, drawing strength from their human allies, who seemed to thrive in the face of adversity. The humans, with their unparalleled resilience, became the backbone of the new fighting force. They trained the coalition soldiers, sharing their knowledge and experience, transforming them into a formidable army. The coalition had always been a diverse group, with each species bringing their unique strengths to the table. But now, they were unified in a way they had never been before. And Zara, who had once been a mere diplomat, found herself at the forefront of this new alliance. She had never imagined herself in such a role, but the circumstances had forced her to grow, to adapt. She had learned from Admiral Drake, from the human commanders, and from the countless soldiers who had fought and died for their cause. The time for their return was drawing near. The scouts sent to Ilara Prime had reported back. The enemy was still there, but their forces were spread thin, their morale shattered. The strike on their command ship had been a crippling blow, and the invaders had been fighting a losing battle ever since. They had underestimated the resolve of the coalition, the strength of their alliance with the humans, and now they would pay the price. The plan for the retaking of Ilara Prime was bold, daring, and filled with risk, just as Admiral Drake would have wanted. The human fleet, now reinforced with new ships and new technology, would lead the assault. The coalition forces, trained and battle-hardened, would follow, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that this time they were not alone. As the day of the assault approached, Zara found herself standing on a cliff overlooking the vast plains of New Ilara. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the land that had become their new home. She felt a sense of peace, of calm before the storm, but also a burning determination. A figure approached, and Zara turned to see one of the human commanders, a woman named Captain Lyra Briggs. They had worked closely together over the past months, and a deep friendship had formed between them. "Ready for this?" Lyra asked, her voice steady. Zara nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. More than ever. Lyra smiled, a rare sight from the normally stoic captain. "Drake would be proud of you, you know. You've come a long way." Zara felt a pang of sorrow at the mention of Drake, but also a sense of pride. "She taught me more than I ever realized. And now it's time to finish what she started." The two women stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what was to come hanging in the air. They both knew the risks, the sacrifices that would be required. But they were ready. They had to be. "Let's bring our people home," Zara said, her voice filled with determination. Lyra nodded, and together, they turned and headed back to the base, where the final preparations were being made. The assault on Ilara Prime began at dawn. The human fleet, with its new ships and upgraded weaponry, launched a surprise attack on the enemy forces, catching them off guard. The invaders, already weakened and demoralized, were no match for the combined might of the humans and the coalition. Zara, leading the ground forces, fought alongside her human allies, her heart filled with a fierce resolve. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, and now they were on the brink of reclaiming their home. The enemy fought back with desperation, but it was clear that the tide had turned. The battle was fierce, but it was also swift. The invaders, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat, their ships fleeing into the void of space. But there was no escape. The human fleet pursued them, relentless in their pursuit of victory. As the last of the enemy's ships were destroyed, Zara felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. The war had cost them so much: lives, homes, a sense of security that would never fully return. But they had won. They had taken back Ilara Prime. The planet was in ruins, the scars of war etched into its surface. But it was theirs once more. The survivors, those who had fled and those who had remained hidden, emerged from the shadows, their eyes filled with hope and relief. Zara stood in the heart of the city, now a shadow of its former self, and looked out at the people who had survived, who had fought and sacrificed for this moment. They had lost so much, but they had also gained something precious. A new beginning, forged in the fires of war. As the sun set on the ravaged landscape, Zara knew that the rebuilding would be long and difficult. But she also knew that they would succeed. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, united in a way that they had never been before. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, she made a silent vow to honor the memory of those who had fallen, to lead the people into a new era of peace and prosperity, and to ensure that the sacrifices they had made would never be forgotten. Ilara Prime was theirs once more, and this time they would make sure it stayed that way.